Good. Well, we are very excited today to have Anais Luiggi, who's a senior business analyst, and Cessna Garcia, who's an experienced designer here at EPAM. But while we talk with them, we want to start talking to you a little bit about us. We were S4M before, now we are EPAM, a global community with presence in over 45 countries, and we are expanding quickly on the region with the best talents. That also means that we are not only hiring people, but developing their career paths with every single one of them. So yeah, we have presence in 7 countries in Latin America. We are in Dominican Republic, we're in Colombia, Peru, Chile, Ecuador, Uruguay, and Panama, where, as I mentioned before, we're looking to expand in the next few years, bringing the best job opportunities and career paths in the region. I know I talk super fast, guys, but I would love to have a conversation and give you a very warm welcome to Anais and Cessna. Thank you very, very much for joining us. And so please, yeah, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Catalina. And first of all, we wanted also to thank you for the opportunity to be here today and kind of share our experience at EPAM. So my name is Anais Luiggi. I'm half Mexican, half French, and I have overall 10 years of experience working in customer management, project management, and recently, in the last few years, in business analysis. I joined EPAM about 2 years ago, and I have been involved in different projects regarding software development, and more recently in initiatives that collaborate with UX design. So I will now let Cessna introduce herself.
Thank you, Catalina. Thank you, Anais. Well, I'm Cessna Garcia. I'm here based in Mexico. I've had almost 6 years of experience as a UI and a UX designer. I joined EPAM about 1.5 years ago. I've experienced working with different industries, creating digital products. And well, yeah, as a UX, there's a lot of projects where basically everything runs smoothly if we have a VA involved. So today we want to talk about our experience on how to get the best out of a collaboration between our 2 roles, a BA and a UX designer. We do believe that for a project, in order to be successful, both roles need to really commit into working together. And as the title says, it takes 2 to tango. So we need each other in order to deliver quality products, right? And we are responsible for delivering both a product that meets business goals, but also the user expectations. So just like tango, we could actually go solo, but the results wouldn't be as good. Today, we want to talk about what a UX and a BA do, what are their responsibilities. We want to talk about when and how they actually collaborate and work together for a project, and to share what has helped us both to really achieve a perfect partner connection. So, sorry, to begin with the basics, we are going to cover what our roles actually do. A UX designer will mainly focus on the delivering a quality experience for the user. We take into account the business goals, but at the end, who will be using our product will be the final user. So we need to really understand them in order to deliver a product that is useful for them, that they can actually enjoy, and that's easy to use. Here we listed some of the activities, for the main activities for a UX designer. We do some user research. We create the user personas based on with the findings from our research. We look out for visual references and are involved in the visual design. These might vary depending whether or not you are also a UI designer or there's a UI designer in your team. We also identify the features for our product that our product needs. We create wireframes and prototypes to showcase our proposals, and afterwards we do some user testing in order to get some feedback and iterate whatever we've done. And now I'll let Anais explain more about the business analyst role.
Thank you, Cessna. So a little bit more about what a business analyst is and what we actually do. So as a BA, my main objective usually will be to make sure that the product is delivering value, both to the user, but also to the company or the client we're working for. So I'm also working in activities related to understanding what the user needs and what their challenges are. But mostly I am focused to operating as a proxy product owner. So here you can look at it kind of as a middle point between the client and the group of designers or developers, for example. So my main objectives or the activities I'm mostly accountable for will be gathering and documenting requirements, defining the product roadmap, understanding what the key features will be, and defining what the minimum viable product can become, right? Just to give you a few examples. So this leads us to the next slide. Now that we know and we have a little overview of what both roles do, we want to tell you a bit more about when we collaborate together. Typically, in a project where we are involved, both UX designers and business analysts will go through different phases. So which could be usually starting with what we call a discovery phase. Here is kind of a deep dive discovery through research, workshops, interviews, and other techniques to kind of try to understand what the current situation is, what the problem or opportunity will be for us to solve, who the user of the solution we're trying to build are, and what the business goals will be for us. This will lead us to the next phase, which is ideation. So once we know a little bit more about what we're trying to solve, we're trying to have a big brainstorming about ideas of how to solve this problem. And these typically will be kind of structuring all the findings from the discovery phase, right? As a business analyst, usually at this phase, I will work very closely with the clients so that they help me identify and define the key features of the product, what the priorities for them are, if we need to take into account any assumptions or restrictions, technical or not. And in parallel, the UX designer like Cessna could support us by taking all these into account and building wireframes and prototypes that will bring to life the ideas, right? And this will take us to the next phase, design. During design, here the idea is that the UX designer will build higher fidelity prototypes so that we're able to test these ideas with the actual users. And in this way, we will validate whether or not the ideas we generate are good or not. And we kind of validate feasibility as well. So once we have here validation of what the design can be, we go on with the last phase, which is solution validation. And here I'm trying to, usually through validation with all the stakeholders, ensure that this phase goes as smoothly as possible and we don't need to iterate again. So here, I'm going to pause a second because it's a long process to explain. But at the end of the day, what we want to communicate is that you see here that throughout all these steps, both UX designers and business analysts are actively engaged. And we're equally important in both at any step, right? So to give you a better idea of how we are so important in both ways, if you think about a product that has a great user experience, but maybe didn't have a business analyst to validate the requirements, well, you might end up with a great application or website, for example, that maybe will never become a business because maybe we didn't validate that there was an actual market for it. And the same idea goes the other way around. If we do have a great, very functional product that has all the relevant content and functionality, but we didn't take into account user experience, we might end up with, for example, a website that has all the relevant information, but maybe a very complex navigation, and in which the user might not find what he or she is looking for. So this takes us to the next slide, where now that you understand that when we work together and what we do separately, we wanted to also share the fact that even though it seems we have very separate roles, goals, and activities, we actually have a lot of overlap in the type of activities we do every day. And this is very important to take into account because, for example, here we listed a few examples of what this overlap may be. And here you see, for example, competitive analysis of benchmark, which usually is associated with business analysis. But throughout our collaboration, I very often rely on Cessna to perform the benchmark of competitors so that she can look for visual references that we can use in turn to integrate into our design, for example. So we both do stakeholder interviews, research, and we document the user needs all together. We kind of collaborate in these. And the tricky part here is that it can sometimes become hard to define how to perform these activities or who should be responsible for them or validate them, right? And today, this is what we are trying to share with you, a few tips or ideas on how to avoid any type of conflicts between the two from our personal experience. So now let Cessna continue with the presentation.
Thank you. So first, we'll want to address these questions. So why tango? Like Anais said, we are looking for a successful collaboration between our roles. So we believe that tango is actually a perfect representation of how a good collaboration looks like, right? So tango is a dance between two people and it relies on their connection. So each partner should know their roles, should trust and respect the other the best way possible in order for them to perform perfectly as a team. There are two of them, but they move as one. And that's exactly what we need to do. We need to find a way for us to achieve these as partners. And we want to focus then on this partner connection, which is actually the heart of tango. So we believe that this partner connection is also essential for our collaboration as a UX and as a BA. And we will be talking about these 5 pillars in order to have a successful partner connection according to some tango principles. And we'll see how these can actually apply to our work. So we will talk through each one of them and give you some key points or examples of how we apply these pillars to our collaboration. And we will start with closeness and freedom of movement.
Okay, so the way we interpret the closeness and freedom of movement that comes from tango is how imagine as partners, both in tango as dancers, but also in our projects as UX and BAs. We need to work close enough so that we understand what each other brings to the table in our projects, but also have kind of the freedom of moving, so the space to work independently from one another. So we came up with this key pillar that we called skills over roles, because we agree that both roles are equally important, but what's more important than the roles themselves is to have the actual skills to build a product, right? So a good way to keep this in mind is we listed here a few tips or takeaways. First, we remind you that it's important that you set the stage. So imagine this more like creating an environment that will facilitate collaboration. So here you want to make sure that you agree or communicate together about what means of communication you prefer. Some people are a bit more responsive with emails, with chats or phone calls. So just have a little chat and discuss which one works best for you. Second, and once you have set the stage, then you would want to have a little introduction, right? To understand a bit more about each other, what your roles and skills are, what's your approach to the project, and all this. And lastly, and here is where we kind of remind you about these roles over skills. We're very aware that roles per se are very different from a company to another. So a business analyst or a UX designer may have a job description that is very different from a company to another. So this is why we really want to highlight the fact that we really want to focus on the skills you have, and you can talk and discuss what your strengths and weaknesses are, so that later on you can rely on that information to, for example, assign each other the activities that have overlap with the two of you.
Yeah, and I think one example of how we apply this in our work, I remember when Anais and I started working together in a project. She actually joined a bit late in the project, and she scheduled one-on-one meetings with all of our teammates. And she was just asking and trying to understand about our needs, our responsibilities. She didn't bring any past assumptions from her previous projects. She just wanted to find the best way that she could help us to achieve our goal, and just trying to get to know each other. So I do think that those type of things are the ones that actually help you start to getting to know each other and build this trust between your teammates that will actually help you to build this partner connection, right? So our next pillar is practical considerations. So we need to make sure that we're actually doing all the right movements, and we usually lay out a plan, but we need to consider that this plan won't be set in stone. We need to do some flexible planning. And like we said, first we got to know each other. We now know all our strengths and our weaknesses, and now we need to break down all the activities that we have for this project and assign who will be the owner in order for each one of us to commit to our responsibilities. We also, like we mentioned before, we have some overlap. So setting who are the owners for the task will help us to avoid any duplicated efforts that these sometimes might happen. And also, this will help us to identify the dependencies and avoid any delays during our project. So one of the most important things after planning all these things is to keep in mind that we need to be flexible to adapt at any time. There might be some changes in our planning, and these changes might actually come from the stakeholders. They could add or change some of the requirements that we all know clients sometimes love to do that. But also the changes might come from ourselves. So we could either be working and realizing that our big plan is not working anymore. So we need to be ready to take a step back and see what doesn't work and change it. All this planning would help to ease our collaboration and eliminate any frustrations. For example, for me, if I know what my teammates are doing or the other people are actually working on, it would actually help me to avoid this feeling like I'm doing everything, no one's helping me, I'm all by myself. So these are the type of things that can actually help everyone ease their minds and work in a better way.
Right. And we know it's very often a bit tricky to set this up. So today we wanted to share a little example or situation that happened to us as well. In a very recent project that we were assigned to and we worked together, which was related to a website redesign. We had all these different activities and deliverables that were requested by the client. And this could be related to defining who the user personas were, the user journeys, documenting the navigation of the website and information architecture, and so on. So if you look at these, you can kind of remember the overlap column we shared earlier. And what we did here to avoid any duplication of efforts and overlapping is that we actually got together with a team of UX designers. We identified what the activities to actually perform these and finalize the deliverables were. We kind of discussed what the dependencies between each of these were, and this helped us to kind of identify who was more suited to perform which activities. So this takes us to the next pillar, which is synchronicity. Sorry, I got muted there. Synchronicity. So we think that it's key for any type of project that we keep a constant communication so that we are aligned throughout the whole project about what the strategy and business goals are. So here, the little list of tips that we came up with is about how we really recommend that you stay transparent with each other, transparent about your progress, because we talked about having dependencies between the different activities, for example, and it helps to keep the project on track. Communication also helps to identify risks so that we can plan ahead for resolution, right? And well, also, and this might be valid for any type of project, not only for design, but it's very important and even more so with the cross-functional team, right? A good practice that we recommend you use is to actually define together well-defined and clear communication plan. And here I'm gonna let Cessna tell you how we have used this in the past.
So here you'll see a simple communication plan, but I'd like to highlight what I think was key for us. We had this short daily sync up. It was just the two of us. In our case, it was additional to our daily Scrum meetings with the whole team. And this was just an open space for us to communicate, to either do some comments or questions about what we were working on, to raise any concerns or ask for each other's feedback. And we were flexible. We knew that some days we will not use that time, but we know it was there just sometimes for us to vent about whatever was happening with our project. And also another key thing was that, or is that you should find an online collaboration tool for you and your team. This will help you to avoid having just your schedules full of meetings. This could either be a channel in Teams where people can just post things and ask questions, or this could be a collaborative board like Miro, where you can just represent your ideas in a more visual way. The main goal is for you to find the best way to keep a constant communication between you and your team. And now we have the next pillar, which is leading and following. And for tango, as we know, there's usually a partner that leads the other. And the thing is, if the other actually is able to follow their own rhythm, it usually makes the collaboration a bit more exciting. And at the end, they both end up doing some leading and following, which is what we think we should also apply in our collaboration. We think that we should seek and provide feedback, that our feedback should go both ways. Both roles would benefit from the feedback of the other. For example, by me showing some of my work to Anais, her feedback will probably help me to not miss some of the business goals that are super relevant, because I might be super focused on the benefit of the user, and vice versa. Anais' work would also benefit from my perspective. Also, this feedback shouldn't just be between us, of course. We'd also seek feedback from our peers, either other designers or the developers or whoever is part of our team. By adding all these perspectives, we will be able to increase the quality of our work. Because at the end, it won't be just one user, right? There'll be a bunch of people that will interact with our product. And last but not least would be seeking feedback from our client. And I know that usually client's feedback, it's a given. Client will have opinions about what we are doing for them. But here the thing is that we suggest you to actually seek or have these touch points constantly, not only waiting for the demo or waiting for a big presentation. You should be in constant communication with main stakeholders. Probably look out for the ones that really engage. But yeah, just try to keep interact with them and avoid doing a bunch of work and then having to rework it because there was a misunderstanding or something like that. And basically our input and all of our experience is super relevant and will help us to get to our solutions, but we can't just think that because we have all this experience we will get the right answer by ourselves. We really need to involve the input of our other teammates, because at the end, in order for us to be able to be a leader, we also need to learn how to follow someone else, right?
That's true. So as Cessna already mentioned, we try throughout our different projects to integrate as much feedback, both internally from our extended team or from the two of us, but also externally to seek and gather feedback from our clients to be sure that we're aligned, right? So a good example of how we have done this in the past, additionally to the sessions that we schedule and that Cessna presented in the communication plan, is also using the collaborative tools, especially for online collaboration, where this might be beneficial for a team to work remotely and also avoid, like Cessna said, to schedule tons of meetings. Here, what you see is an example of how, for example, Cessna would post her wireframes in this board and then just notify me so that I could perform an internal review, comment some little changes that might be, can we make this button bigger? Can we change the title to this? Or bigger changes. And once we performed this internal review, we were using the same process to gather the client's review by sharing and extending the access to this board with the client as well. And well, last but not least, in terms of the pillars we're sharing today, we really want to highlight how important it is that you find your own balance. Like we say today, where we're presenting takeaways from our personal collaboration together, but it's really important that you get to define your own strategy, right? And the thing is that the more personal you get with this, the less effort you will feel when collaborating together, right? It shouldn't be very hard to work together in a project, right? So we really think that it's sometimes we might get lost in the workload we have, or like Cessna mentioned, lose visibility and feel like we're kind of working alone. So it's very important to pause at one point and really remember that both of us are going towards the same direction and we have the same goal. In the end, we both want to build and deliver products that are both usable, but also delightful in terms of experience so that the users are satisfied with it as well. And we want to really point out that it's very important to take a moment to listen to the other and also integrate the inputs and point of view from the others, because like Cessna said, the vision of a business analyst can sometimes provide good feedback to her work, but the same way around, sometimes during our projects, I might turn to her to comment on the documentation or definition of features so that she can provide to me a different vision of what she thinks is more valuable.
So summing up, like we said, it takes two to tango, and this won't be a magical formula set in stone that will work every time. All of these won't work if one of us is not committed. And These pillars, we think, help us during our collaboration, but we're talking from our personal experience. Everyone works in a different way, and we really need to find what will help us to work better with any of our teammates. At the end, what we did was learn about each other, identify our strengths and our weaknesses to help us assign the activities that we really wanted or were good at. And we kept just constant communication to see what was going on, to see if we were agreeing, to get feedback from each other. We were able to put our roles aside and just kind of like got the best from each other, and we're able to take into account each other's opinions. Because at the end, we just knew that we were going towards the same goal, right? And we just wanted to build a strong partner connection. So we hope this helps you too. And now we will open the floor for any comments or questions that you might have. I don't know if you guys are going to share the slide.
Yeah, we have one question. Can you hear me? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, we have a question. It is, as a BA or a product owner, who leads those UX sessions? Who's gonna take that?
Well, I'm curious to know which sessions we're talking about here. I don't know if the person that asked the question wants to unmute. Can they unmute actually?
I think not, but maybe on our chat they can share their comments. Jennifer, maybe. What do you say? Jennifer says, research, design thinking.
Well, research might not be really a session. It can be an activity that we perform individually, and then we would schedule the person that takes that, for example, would schedule the session for revision or for feedback, or if it's an activity that we would perform as a team, then we might have, for example, like Cessna said, we typically have a daily sync up that where we kind of sync up and share our progress so that we avoid researching or looking at the same sources, and we can kind of connect and integrate the findings of the other. I don't know, Cessna, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I think, for example, and I don't know, maybe you didn't meant the question to me from this, but doing some research, you might have to interview some people or some stakeholders. And at the end, just like we mentioned, we need to know our strengths and our weaknesses. And we might plan the activity. We both input into what we want to ask, but at the end, if Anais is just more comfortable leading the conversation, then she can do it. I'll be there, I'll just take notes, but we know what each other like, and sometimes it might be like we both don't like to talk to people, so we just need to decide who will take the lead every once in a while. But at the end, like we said, it's just both of us just trying to get to the same goal and deciding who will lead at the moment.
Awesome.
And
thank
I
you.
see Jennifer added the daily meetings. Yes, I usually schedule them, but that doesn't mean that I'm leading them. So it's really about syncing up together.
Yeah, it's basically a conversation between both of us.
Good. Thank you, guys. We have two more questions. What kind of lessons or challenges did you go through to get to this strategy?
Well, I think it was just like trial and error, and we just started to notice things that work for us. Like, for example, we sometimes divided some activities like, okay, you'll do this and we can just sync up next week or whatever. And sometimes I noticed that while I was doing an activity, I really needed Anais' advice. So at the end, it was just kind of like going through the process and noticing what actually made click, right? So it was either at the end when we presented something that we realized that if we actually work together or if we had each other's feedback, we actually received better feedback from the client. And in the other hand, when I work by myself or stuff like that, we didn't get the same result, or we had more feedback because maybe I missed some things, or vice versa, the same with Anais. I know, Anais, if you want to comment about that.
No, I think it's more or less the same. I mean, before joining this team, I think Cessna mentioned that it was the first time when I arrived to this team that I was collaborating directly with UX designers. So I came from a developers team where I was used to be the creative one or more. So arriving within a team of designers, it was very new to me. So that's one of the tips we gave, that I took the time to go and meet them one by one to understand what do you do, what are you good at, what's your approach, and also how can I help you? Because as a business analyst or proxy product owner, I do help out a lot with the stakeholders management. I have to help facilitate some meetings. So like we said, we're going towards the same goal, and it's easier if we try to understand what each other's goals are and how we can help out each other.
Great, now we can see the questions on the screen. I'm gonna take one that is on the chat. Maria Araujo asks, how long have you been working together and how long does it take to create this synergy between the two roles?
Oh, that's a compliment, I guess. We haven't been working together that long. I think I joined this team back in November or December last year. So actually time goes very fast. So it's been 6 months. But yeah, I think it's not about how long, it's really about how you set the stage, like we say, like how your first steps will be and how open you are to listening to others. People like being listened to, regardless of their background or if they're like high management or not. And that's how you create synergy regardless of the teammate or skills you have.
Great. And I believe the last one, oh, or no, we have two more. How would you resolve a situation in which internally you don't see eye to eye among yourselves?
I think it has rarely happened to us. It's not that we don't see into each other's eyes. It might have happened maybe in other situations, but we have had also, like we say, sometimes you need to compromise. Sometimes what Cessna feels like is a priority or more important that she thinks for the user is best, but then might not go along with what me and the client defined as a priority, or goes kind of not against, but not aligned with the defined feature, for example. So this is a situation where diplomacy is needed, of course. Again, it's very important to get to understand why. Why are we having this conflict? Maybe Cessna has a point. Maybe we were blinded by business goals and we missed a very important point. Or like Cessna said, maybe she went too passionate about it and forgot that we had like set defined steps to build. And that's again about communication. A good way is really to, if really is more personal about the person, I would say that it's very important that you stay calm. It's very important that you show respect for one another. And everybody likes, like I said, to be listened to and be taken into account. And you could maybe bring a third person like the client or the project manager to add kind of as someone to facilitate the exchange if it really is that important.
Yeah, and I think that at the end, by having all this setup at the beginning of trusting each other and respecting each other's role, that also helps when we have this type of conflict. And maybe I'm going too personal here, but usually when you don't like someone, if they have an opinion that's different than yours, there will be problems there. So if you actually respect and understand where that person is coming from, you can actually go like, okay, I give it to you, maybe I'm wrong, and like Anais said, just compromise and see if you will either, maybe this is about a proposal, so maybe you can just present two options to the client, or even propose that change to the client and see what's their opinion, because at the end, it's not only about us, it's about the client and the user.
Awesome, thank you. And last one, that's a pretty good one. What are those touch points or pain points where it takes more than two to tango? For instance, how do you interact with a product manager?
Well, a product manager or project manager, they can interact with us. And like we say, we do have our daily sync-ups because we like to work very closely together and in alignment. But we do have that kind of checkpoints with other roles. With product manager, sorry, it might more be as a decision maker. That's kind of related to the other question where you need someone to split the apple in two and say, no, actually, this is what we're going for example. Or to have feedback because we're not sure about one or another option. And that's where it's also useful to have that feedback from another role.
Yeah, and I think also that's when the flexibility comes into action, that sometimes depending on the project or depending on the role, some people might be more or less engaged during the project. So if in this case a product manager is super engaged, then you should be open to having them more involved in your process or including them in more things. Sometimes they are super busy, they just have like quick touch points, so you just need to know when you can actually approach them, or when you could actually like super rely on them, or just kind of like guess what they will say and move on, because
Right.
then you won't be able to go on with your project.
Yes, and that's where I was talking about business analysts as a middle point. That's one of the, I think, you tell me, Cessna, but I think that's one of the most valuable activities for the rest of the team, is to really try to facilitate the work and collaboration with others. And if we do have less responsive stakeholders, it's really something very important that we work on engaging them and providing the right amount of feedback.
Awesome, guys. Thank you very much for this very insightful tech talk. It was amazing. I enjoyed it, and I'm sure everyone here did too. And we'll see you next one. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.